Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to have you back again in our YPO Davos Hub. Welcome. It's a pleasure for me to host today Minister Paula Ingabire. She is the Rwanda Minister of ICT and Innovation. Prior to that, she's been heading actually the ICT at the Rwanda Development Board. She's also taking care of the lead of the City of Innovation in Kigali. We're going to be talking about it. And of course, she was called in the cabinet of Paul Kagame, a very dear friend of YPO, to lead her ministry. And an amazing ministry, if I may say, because it's 50% women, absolute diversity. 2 countries in Africa have this diversity at the cabinet, Ethiopia and Rwanda, and I think that's absolutely amazing. I think YPOers, this is truly food for thought for us in the future. First question, if I may say. This is the second time that you are in Davos. So what are your impressions as we reach the end of the week this year? And what will you take home back in Rwanda from this Davos experience?
Thank you very much. Yes, as you rightly pointed out, this is my second time in Davos. And I think the interesting bit is really, and as usual, is the quality of conversations that are happening across the board, different fields, but also the strong emphasis on really understanding how, the fourth industrial revolution technologies can play a part in, in the different industries that we're talking about. But then also, most importantly, I think our biggest takeaway even this week was really most of the panel discussions that were focused on technology governance, that are looking at cybersecurity, but also data protection and privacy protection mechanisms in place. And so I think they're quite interesting discussions that help in many ways for the policymakers to have more informed, input into the kind of policies that are being designed or redesigned, but also on the business side, really understanding where are the opportunities, where do they lie, and how does the business community and the industry position themselves to really tap into these opportunities. Most importantly, it's really even a platform for networking that allows for that kind of engagement to sort of kickstart and then going forward to look at what we can do together between governments and the business community.
Thank you. Moving the next question to my brother Emery, Board of Directors members and fellow compatriot of Rwanda.
Thank you, Pascal. Honour Minister, Africa has been together now in joining hands with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement signed last year in Kigali. How do you see this instrument to play a significant role in developing the continent? McKinsey and different reports are showcasing that Africa is now growing much faster than OECD countries. 7.8% GDP growth for Rwanda and 4% on average the whole continent. How this agreement can play a role to fast track even further the development of the continent?
What the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement provides us with is a framework through which the largest single market can be created. Whether it is trade, inter-trade or intra-trade that is going to be happening in and outside the continent, I think there's a lot of potential to even look at unprecedented growth beyond the numbers that you just cited. But also the other thing to look at is really even thinking about the different aspects of how, especially because we're now even in Davos, to even think about elements of digital trade, improving the efficiencies, driving costs down, but also making sure that equitable growth is happening across the continent. So there's definitely a lot of potential for the AFCFTA.
President Kagame and yourself created the Smart Africa Alliance, which is now has got its wings in over 30 countries. Can you explain us your goals there?
So for a start, the Smart Africa Alliance has today about 30 governments that form part of the alliance. But it's not just an alliance for the African government. It also looks at bringing on board the private sector and the businesses. And that's important because as you think about digital transformation agenda for the entire continent, it's not a role that a single player in the ecosystem can fulfill extensively. And so it's important even for us from the onset when the alliance was designed to think about that platform that brings the public and private sector together to co-create some of the digital solutions that respond to the different industries. And we've seen what we do is to think about those kind of projects that allow for shared benefits and interests as countries. But beyond that, we also look at what are the priorities for each country. And for example, Rwanda's priority is on smart cities. For a country like Kenya, it's digital economy. So for each country, they have a flagship program that they're leading. But the beauty about that, and that is why Smart Africa was designed, is that if a country like Rwanda decides to implement smart city solutions, how do we document in a blueprint some of the learnings of us implementing smart cities? Because we know any other country on the continent is going to need to implement smart cities. So that documentation, being able to look at the lessons learned and success stories and documenting them for other countries, makes it easy to fast-track replication across the continent. And so it's a very good platform where we share ideas, we share success stories, the do's and don'ts as we implement the different flagships that we are each in charge of, but then more collectively looking at projects that benefit us together as countries. And beyond countries, also for the private sector to sit down. I mean, you could decide as a private company to say you're going to every country to understand opportunities that are in. But if you have a platform through which you can sit and understand the collective opportunities that these countries have, then I think there's more benefit in having such a platform that allows even for the business community to tap into a larger market than just one jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Honourable Minister. A quick question towards the Kigali Innovation City. Rwanda is positioning itself as a hub for information technology for the continent. Can you elaborate a little bit on the vision of Kigali Innovation City, how far the project is developed today, and how these business people present here can tap into the Kigali Innovation City as an opportunity?
Our vision and desire to be an innovation hub as a country really is born out of knowing that technology is one of our key growth drivers as an economy. For many of you here in the room, you know the past that our country has gone through, but even more so knowing that we don't have limited natural resources as a country, we knew that our people are the biggest resource that we have as a country. But also we knew that using technology, one, to skill them, but also to find ways of driving growth for the country and development was an important aspect. And this is a vision that started back in 2000. And but also we understand that across the 54 African countries, there's also a desire and a vision to become an innovation hub. What we do know, and through the Smart Africa that we just talked about, is also to understand that we all have different strengths, and these strengths are complementary in nature. And so what we've done is to say, as we position ourselves to become an innovation hub, where can we win and where can we create value, not just for ourselves as a country, but create value for the rest of the continent. And that is how the Kigali Innovation City was established. It's an ecosystem that brings together, a platform that brings together, an innovation ecosystem of different players in different industries. Now, what we also wanted to do was to focus on what areas can we start off in terms of building technologies. So when you think about Rwanda, these are some of the homegrown technology-enabled solutions that have been built from Rwanda. And we're focused on building agri-tech solutions, digital healthcare, as well as fintech. And there's a whole lot of analysis that has gone into prioritizing those three areas. One, especially because not just for Rwanda, but for the rest of the continent, predominantly most of the people are involved in agriculture activities. So if we can start to think about technology or digital technology solutions that can help improve agricultural productivity, that can also help these farmers that are involved in this space, then we know that we are creating impact for the majority or the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Again, you can't talk about quality of life when you're not looking at healthcare. How do you improve healthcare across the continent? If Rwanda is trying to look at both access and quality of healthcare, any country on the continent is trying to address exactly that same issue. So what are some of those innovative solutions, whether it's the use of precision medicine type of technologies that we can use, one, to improve quality healthcare, but also the use of mobile technologies, for example, to improve access to healthcare so that it's not as strenuous and expensive as it is today. And so we believe that in a few years we'll start to see a critical mass of solutions coming in that space. And one thing I wanted to respond to that Emery alluded to earlier, we don't want to just be an innovation hub for the continent. We want to be a Pan-African hub for the continent. And what does that mean? It really means attracting talent from across the continent. If we've identified these specific streams where we want to build solutions leveraging digital technologies, how do we create attract some of the, talent that is across the continent? Because what you also want to do is to build global solutions. So if you have someone from Kenya, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire sitting together and building a solution that is fit for the entire continent, then I think there's value in being a Pan-African hub. And we see a lot of this in our initial efforts of attracting the initial players into this ecosystem, where we have the Carnegie Mellon University, that is an Africa campus that has a good portion of students from across the continent, not just Rwandans. You have the Africa Institute for Mathematical Sciences that also has researchers from the entire continent, ALU. And so that's the design that even from the academic point of view, where you have the talent being created, the pipeline of talent being created, that you're also attracting this Pan-African pool of talent that will help you to design the right solutions.
Thank you. Allow me to get back to the real ground in Rwanda and the reality. I've been very inspired by the project that you started to drive end of this year and that you're continuing about, making sure that you create information penetration by offering smart mobile phone to people in rural areas and, really go deep in the country. And, I looked at some of the numbers. You've got objective of 340,000 people to receive a smartphone in remote areas. There's even a bigger project. Where do you stand there?
Yes, so that's the Connect Rwanda challenge, and actually the target is 1 million. Not I thought I should clarify that, because the 340 actually, you're not so far off, in the sense that it was a figure that showed the number of smartphones that are bought every year on average. And so we thought to ourselves, if we have only 14.5% smartphone penetration in the country, and every year we're seeing an average of 340,000 phones sold on the market, it's probably going to take us another 20 years before everyone, the entire population has smartphones. But also understanding that a smartphone is not a luxury tool, it's a basic tool. If we're talking about connecting everyone to the internet, I think the very basic tool that you can think about, that you can use to connect people to the internet and to the digital economy, is a smartphone. And so we had to ideally, the way the initiative started off, we were trying to think, how do we create innovative ways of making sure smartphones are affordable as a starting point? And of course, there's a whole host of things that we need to address: local content, digital skills that we needed to look into. But also we knew that the cost of the device was also a challenge for many of the households within Rwanda. And so we thought to ourselves, let's think of some creative ways. And so that's how Connect Rwanda Challenge was born. But the idea of Connect Rwanda Challenge is to target those people who will never afford to buy a smartphone and put it in their hands. Of course, we are also thinking beyond just buying a smartphone. Can you afford to have the service to buy or pay for the services that you need for this smartphone, whether it's data, SMS costs, and calling costs? And we're working with the different operators within our economy to put in place very affordable packages for this particular category of citizens, but also looking at some of the public spaces to make sure that you can access at least free Wi-Fi that allows them, even in the event that you cannot even afford a basic package, there's a place that is within close proximity where you can access the internet and be able to request from a service from the government, look at your medical records or follow up your child's education, whatever it is that we can look at. And so our target is 1 million as I started off. 4 weeks into the challenge, we've been able to collect about 40,000 smartphones. And in fact, distribution is going to be starting in about 2 weeks. And the kind of people we're looking at are the teachers, the community health workers, people that are really at the grassroots of the community, helping citizens to access services, but also most importantly, who can help us to build the digital literacy that is required, especially in the rural communities. And I hope that we can have some of you joining us in this journey.
You know what? I hear you. You know, like the Rwanda government, YPO is very agile, right? we love quick fix on situations. So, Fleur, how about your platform, pledging? Can you give a word? Is there anything that you could do to help?
So we have a platform called Proof of Impact, and we have companies like a luxury travel agency in New York who's using an Emirates jet to go into Rwanda to visit the most exclusive lodges. They would love to offset their negative footprint by buying impact events on the ground. So we've already sold them solar panels because that obviously is a carbon mitigator, but we would love to have inventory of access to mobile that we could sell to these corporates. So please, connect.
Absolutely. Let's talk.
Thank you. Excellent. Another one that really inspired me, Zipline. Are you continuing to scale? How is it working? The efficiency, the covering? Can you give me a word on the situation now, covering medical support and?
Yes, so Zipline started off with blood products that were being transported using drones to some of the hospitals and community health centers that were in some of those rural areas that were not as accessible as the ones in urban areas. And that was just the first phase. And so the next phase that we're looking at is now to include other medical products that would benefit from being transported using drones. And in fact, Zipline is also has started to expand even beyond Rwanda, which brings me back to why earlier I talked about our proof of concept strategy, because it's not about just creating a solution for Rwanda, it's also finding ways to scale that solution beyond just Rwanda. And that's something as a government, we don't have a one-size-fits-all model on how we can help companies to scale, but we work with many of these companies to understand now that this proof of concept has been successful here, what is required to scale, one, in terms of the services you provide within the economy, but also to scale beyond Rwanda so that it's a more sustainable business model for some of these companies. And so Zipline is one of them, but also it's beyond just the efficiencies. When you look at the efficiencies, it used to take us about 2.5 hours to deliver blood on average to some of these community health centers. And today it's taking us close to 26 minutes. To deliver blood, and also it's on demand, and so you don't have to replicate, the cold room storage facilities in every community health care center, which would actually be an even larger investment if we had to replicate that across the country. And so because this is on demand and it's able to be delivered on time, so we're able to build on those efficiencies. The other efficiency gain that we had with Zipline was the ability to reduce blood wastage. For the centers that are directly served, we've gone to 0% wastage, literally. But at least moving from about 35% wastage to 0.6% wastage by just using drones has been a very good outcome for us, which is why we want to scale beyond just using drones for delivery of blood products. In fact, because of Zipline, we've been able to create a drone ecosystem that is looking beyond just the healthcare system. Of course, you have like the agriculture sector today. Last year, we were able to map all the arable land in the country, an exercise that on average would take about a year and a half. To map all, the arable land in the entire country took us about 2 months, because they were using drones. And so you also have the use of drones to, spray in the, marshlands and avoid the spread of malaria. So just having Zipline in the economy has helped us to really scale and grow a drone ecosystem within the country.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Sure. Honourable Minister, lots of companies have decided to choose Rwanda as, like you rightly mentioned, Zipline, B-Box, and so on, to choose Rwanda as the place for starting their POC in Africa and even worldwide. What is the strategy to make Rwanda a knowledge-based economy? We have heard you mentioning it, and what are the pillars? And would people in the room have some incentive if they decide to come and invest in Rwanda, in particular, accompanying you in this knowledge-based economy program?
Thanks, Emery. I think our broad vision is really to become a knowledge-based economy, and truly what that means is how are we using knowledge and information in the different, industries that are driving growth within the economy. But also beyond that, it's, I think, broadly looking is what are some of those opportunities that exist in the country that allow for us to tap into a larger global ecosystem of investors who may have the skills, the know-how, the financing, and they're just looking for the right opportunities or needs that their kind of know-how can help respond to. And we, through the Rwanda Development Board, which is the for government that helps to promote investments and exports, but also has a very specific focus on building skills, because at the heart of all these investments, at the heart of this economic development we're talking about as a country, is the ability to create the right kind of skills that can even sustain the gains. And so there's a whole range of investment incentives that are given to investors. And I like the part where you talked about proof of concept. The model that we used for Zipline may not be the model that is going to be used for B-Box. And I think, and that's important for even for many of you that are in the room to understand that when you talk about a proof of concept, it's the ability to be able to walk with you in this journey that both of us are probably not experts in. We just know there's a challenge here, there's a need, it's an opportunity. You also know you have skills, but maybe it hasn't been tested against our particular context. And so how do we craft very unique circumstances that allow for this proof of concept to succeed is really what it is. And in many times, yes, we have a whole investment code that outlines the baseline investment incentives that any investor could get. But over and above that, we always have extra incentives that are tailored to the nature and scale of partnership or investment that we're venturing into as partners. And so I encourage for many of you that are looking for opportunities to really explore the opportunities that we have, and don't be held back by investment code. I'm sure there's always room and opportunity to discuss many of these, but most importantly, understanding that we're looking for scalability. That's important for us. The ability to create jobs, but also meaningful jobs. That's important. If it wasn't about creating meaningful jobs, then we'd never be able to achieve our goal of becoming a knowledge-based economy. And so really working together to co-create that value, whether it's revenues for investors as yourselves, but also value in terms of impact that it would have on our economy is very important. Thank you.
Maybe just before giving the floor to the audience for Q&A, we hear there is an event happening in Rwanda, a YPO event.
You probably know better than I do.
So I'm sure the audience would like to know what they need to expect when coming to Rwanda and visit it, beyond information technology space. A welcoming note from you would add value, and then we can proceed with the Q&A.
I think none of you would want to miss out in being part of the discussions that are going to shape the continent and some of the opportunities that we have. But also, I think the ability to engage with the different business leaders like yourselves is incentive enough for you to come down. But beyond just that, there's a lot that Rwanda has to offer. Whether it's the different touristic destinations that you will be able, so you can mix work and play in your trip as you come for the event. But I think most importantly, there's also the potential to be able to, if you have a very concrete idea, the opportunity to flesh it out with the relevant organizations and work out a way of building a business venture in Rwanda, but also for the rest of the continent. I'm not sure if Emery has told you that we can register a business in 6 hours. So if you're spending 48 hours in Rwanda, you have 6 hours to actually register and get your certificate. So that should be the very starting point for, when you come into Rwanda. As soon as you land and you're well rested, immediately think about registering a business, and then let's work out the different opportunities that business that you'll have registered can explore together with us. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Now, fellow YPOers, we will take 1 or 2 questions. Over to you.
So these types of forums are great because we get to engage with people like yourself. What next? I mean, it's easy enough to go to Rwanda. It's easy enough to register a business and very many other things. How do we leverage the access that we've gained today in being able to take advantage of some of the stuff that we've discussed today or other ideas that come?
I think this is a good starting point in terms of even understanding, what's the openness for us as a government to have investors like yourself come into our economy. And I'm glad that Emery is also part of this, the YPO group. I think what we can do beyond exchanging contacts, but also looking at concrete opportunities, is assigning focal, and we do that even for other investors, where you have like a focal person that really walks the journey with you, from identifying and matching opportunities to some of your value proposition that you may have, but also walking that journey post, even once you set up within the country. But the other thing that I would like, because this is such a short discussion, so we weren't able to extensively address, the wealth of opportunities that we have as a country. I think the other thing that we are going to do, what we are going to do is to even send out for the majority of you that are here in the room and those that are not here that are also interested, is to send you a deck of some of these investment opportunities that have already been thought through. And then if you're particularly interested in any of them, then we can link you up with the different subject matter experts or institutions that are following up on those particular opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister. I think we will close the conversation over here, and with a warm thanks note. Thank you. We'll do it the Rwandan way. We are going to clap for the Minister.
Thank you for having me. And I do hope I see all the faces in Kigali, May 13th to 15th.
Yes, I think there is a burning question here.
It's actually not a question. Thank you so much for giving me this. Just an afterthought. I'm from Pakistan. I'm a member parliament there. And one of the things that we're working on and we keep talking about is that not only in Pakistan do we need to work on technology, but the relationship between Africa and Pakistan on technology specifically. So I, in particular, with another friend of mine, have been trying to work with the National IT Board of Pakistan and the Foreign Office to create a link between African countries and we also knew about the conference in Kigali, and figure out how we can connect in the right way the two countries, which are both coming up. So if there any way that we can connect and make a way forward towards it, I'll be grateful.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will highlight the point that Honourable Minister mentioned earlier. We're having YPO Africa Ignite happening in Rwanda from 13 to 15th of May. I think that will be a great a platform to come and discuss business opportunity, see tourism attraction, and get to know more about the continent and Rwanda in particular. So thank you very much, Honourable Minister. It has been a pleasure to having you here.
Thank you for having me.